This is the Real Estate Investing Abundance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. I know you're excited to get into today's show, but I have a very exciting announcement to share with you before moving to the show. We've just launched a complimentary and comprehensive webinar that, among other things, shows you how to legally use passive real estate investing to reduce your taxes, recession-proof your nest egg, and take the sting out of inflation. If you are curious to learn more, go to stevetalker.com/webinar. It is complimentary and only takes a couple of minutes of your time. Once again, that is stevetalker.com/webinar. I'll see you in the webinar. Enjoy today's show. Hello, enlightened investors. Welcome back to Real Estate Investing Abundance. I'm your host, Dr. Allen, and what a pleasure to be back with you again today. We're going to take a peek into a doctor's guide to multifamily investing. And with us today is Dr. Pranay Parikh, and he is a medical doctor, serial entrepreneur, online course creator, and podcast host. His unconventional journey to medicine helped him learn the skills to excel in entrepreneurship. So, Pranay, tell us about an experience that helped you to be who you are today.
Thanks, Alan, for the opportunity. It's hard not to say that medicine is still a large part of my life. And I think just getting into that process and creating kind of the life that is able to handle medicine, medical school, residency, working 80 to 100-hour days, and really taking care of people's lives in times of when they're kind of at their lowest. It's just getting through medical school, I think, has just helped me create these ways to handle life and to handle real estate and to handle the stresses of kind of every day. So definitely medical school, especially I did medical school in a third world country. And studying medicine under, candlelight, because the power's gone out and the water's gone out, so you can't take a warm shower before your test. It kind of hardens you, in a way, to kind of handle the pressures of life later on.
Where did you study medicine?
It's in an island called Dominica. Your listeners will know because when you watch Jurassic Park, when they're flying in, that's Dominica. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, interesting way to get into real estate investing for sure. And definitely a lot learned from medical school. No matter where you go to medical school, it is certainly a challenge to get through that for sure. And of course, it's not easy being a physician, and it's not just dealing with patients. It is running a practice and dealing with employees and the whole array of issues when you become a physician. Truly a challenge. Well, why do you believe that doctors make great entrepreneurs beyond what we've already talked about?
So physicians are on both sides. I actually wrote 2 competing articles. One, why physicians make great entrepreneurs, and why physicians make bad entrepreneurs. And they kind of go hand in hand. So physicians, we're really quick to learn things. So for example, in medical school, 1 month I'd spend time with the heart doctor. Next time I'd do OB-GYN, and then I'd do the lung doctor, or then I would do surgery. So I'm picking up a whole new almost industry in a couple weeks. And obviously I'd not be an expert, but you'd have to learn things quick, right? And it's really understanding how you're able to do things, because it's like a fire hose of information. So I find that physicians, if they're kind of able to get past themselves, and the downside is we're very risk averse, right? Which you want your doctor to be very risk averse at the hospital, but you don't want them to be risk averse in vaccine development, for example, or new medication development, right? You want them to go out and try things and fail in a safe way, but you want them to keep experimenting and try out new things and For example, we have this new vaccine that's a sticker, so you don't have to get injected. That's cool, right? I mean, whoever thought of being able to come up with a sticker, a topical way, something that goes on your skin,
Mhm.
but you really need people to be willing to take a risk, right? And that's why we love real estate, because there's a lot of people aren't willing to take the risk, even though we know it's a calculated risk to go buy this property. We've done the research, it's numbers backed, but there's still a risk. You buy the property, maybe it doesn't turn out the way you think, and you course correct. And that's another superpower of physicians. We're able to take in information, and from a story, you tell me a story, and I look at the labs, I'm able to come up with a whole diagnosis and a treatment. And if things don't necessarily go well because people are complicated, diseases are complicated, we're able to kind of course correct. And we also are great at working at teams, right? The physician is often the top of the totem pole, but there's so many people that really help us get our job done. Nurses, my wife is a nurse, all the respiratory techs, x-ray people, even the front desk, all these amazing people that are really the hands, eyes, and ears of the hospital, and they really make it. Especially when it's high stakes like it is in the hospital, there's a lot of personalities, and
Mhm.
we're able to kind of coordinate that for the best of the patient. So I think that is something that you can really carry on, because as a real estate person, yeah, as the owner, you're in charge, but you're there to make sure the property manager playing nice with the contractor and everyone is doing their job so that the patient, the property is doing well.
Yeah, a lot of similarities there in terms of the skill set. Well, generally speaking, physicians are pretty well paid. So what is the drive? What is the interest in going outside of your physician practice to go into real estate, to further complicate your life, to give yourself another task on top of your multiple tasks already? What's the drive to do that?
So if you look at the most well-off NBA players, a lot of them own real estate. So if you take Jordan out of the equation, Shaquille O'Neal, he owns a ton of Five Guys. He owns a ton of real estate because he knew that despite his $100 million plus salary, it's more important what he does with his money and where he invests and how it grows than how much he makes. And to a much smaller degree, I'd say the same for physicians. We get, nice $200,000-$300,000 salary, but that can go away relatively quickly if you don't know what you're doing. And if you're in a place like I am in Los Angeles, California, already 50% of it is going away to the government. So how do you limit that in a very legal way, right? The tax code is written by people who own property. So it's very favorable to people that buy property. And this is kind of a way for the government to subsidize us doing real estate. They don't want to go out and build all these houses or renovate them and give affordable housing. We do that. We provide this service, and the government gives us less in taxes for that. So if if as a physician you're getting taxed 40, 37, 40, 50%, then it's really important that you need to find some other sources of income, not only for diversification, but so that your money can grow in a relatively tax efficient manner.
What advice do you have for other professionals who, like you, they're finding fulfillment in the work that they do, but they may feel like you do, that they need tax shelters, or maybe they need a way and a means to develop a legacy for their family?
Great question. So one day, a cardiologist, a heart doctor, came to me. She's like, "I love my job. I didn't spend 18 years of my life to do this, to not do this." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds great. Now, how much time do you spend with each patient?" She tells me 15 minutes. That's what insurance pays for. I was like,
Mm.
"Okay, what if you could double that time? I bet you'd be happier. I bet they'd be happier, much more likely to follow what you're saying, right?" So what does that take? It takes money. So don't look at it as, oh, I don't need money. There's a lot of people in engineering that are making a fortune. But look at it as crafting your life in a way. It's a tool, right? Money's a tool. And it's a way to craft your life into something that is more interesting. I actually gave a lecture on this where I mentioned that there's studies that show that at age 18, and I know, Alan, for you that wasn't that long ago, but for the rest of us, I just turned 38. So at age 18, you'll have spent 90 to 95% of your time with your parents. And
Mhm.
I wanted to change that. So, my parents and I, we go on a large, long vacation, at least a week. And most people spend 4 days with their parents, 4 24-hour days. I
Mhm.
was like, there's no way. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I'll spend 6 hours here, 6 hours there, 4 24-hour periods. So use real estate or money from work in a way that is able to really change your life. And most importantly, and this is why I do syndications or passive real estate, however I make money, I don't want it to add a second or obviously it takes a little time, but I don't want to add it more than a couple hours to my workload. And I own my own real estate and happy to do so, but I don't do it anymore, or I don't buy anymore because I am really focused on time. How do I buy back my time? How do I
Mhm.
make more money for the same amount of time that I'm spending doing things right now?
Well, that is interesting that you started out owning your own property, but you have now shifted that to passive investing strategies. Just kind of take us through that journey, why it is. I mean, because you didn't have to start with owning your own properties. You could have gone directly to the passive route. Why did you start with owning your own properties, and why have you shifted that strategy?
So two reasons. One, I didn't qualify. So to be to do syndications, you have to typically be an accredited investor. So that means you make $200,000 per year for 2 years, or 300 as a couple, or you have a net worth over $1 million, not including your primary. So as a resident physician, I work 100 hours, but I make 50,000 a year. So about $7 an hour, right? And so it took a couple tax returns for me to qualify. And I wanted something that was tangible at the time. Now, if you ask me how many times I've visited my property, once at closing and once when my parents were out of town to show them I owned it. It's 20 minutes away. I'd never go to it. So the whole tangible thing I think is overrated. And so I couldn't qualify. So I was like, hey, I was a year out of residency. I had saved up my money and I wanted to buy some real estate. And this was many years ago. I actually didn't really know about syndications that well. And I spent hundreds of hours trying to find this property. It's in Los Angeles. To make something cash flow, it takes a lot of work. And I found a property, and now looking back, it was a home run. But I was like, okay, this is great. I could buy one of these a year and retire in 10 years. And I spent 200 plus hours looking for my next property, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, I would have made a lot more money had I spent just more time in my day job. So I thought, hey, maybe there's a way to get into real estate. There's always real estate investment trusts, but though that's like it's treated like a stock. It doesn't get
Mhm.
the tax benefits that real estate does. So then I found syndications, and we actually teach a course on syndications called Passive Real Estate Academy. And at the time, there wasn't any education out there. There wasn't the Hands Off Investor, which is another great book. And we've had thousands of students take it, and over time they were like, hey, can we just invest with you guys? Like, why don't you guys do this for us? And we were in the beginning a very small part of large deals, and now we take down whole deals together, and we kind of throw our weight around and really protect our investors because we bring in so much of the money, and we're almost like an institution. We could say, hey, no, like, buy it now or sell it now, or like, hey, this is really in favor or really for our investors. You guys should do something this way.
Enlightened investors, if you haven't done so already, be sure and click that like button and also click that share so others can take advantage of the content. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming episodes. Well, let's just take a moment here and share with our audience what you actually have to offer investors and how it is that they can get in touch with you to take advantage of that.
I started, along with two other physicians, we started a company called Ascent Equity Group, started by three physician dads. And it is a way for people to invest in real estate without being a landlord, while still getting all the tax benefits. So the depreciation, tax deferral, tax shelter, you get the same as if you owned it. However, you just get a percentage. So that percentage ownership in the building, and we buy large apartment complexes, you get the profits, the tax benefits, and all that stuff. So it's a way to get into it without doing it yourself. And it's very tax efficient. You don't pay taxes on the returns until we sell the property. So for example, 5 years, and our returns are anywhere from 13 to 15% IRR. And we try to buy in the Sun Belt, and we really focus on two things: capital preservation and cash flow.
And how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah. So you can go to ascentequitygroup.com, and you'll see a little quiz on there right in the top. And it kind of helps you understand what kind of real estate investor you are. And my email is Pranay, Pranay, at ascentequitygroup.com. And then small little plug, I have a podcast as well where I talk all things entrepreneurship, and it's called From MD to Entrepreneur.
And we'll have all that information in our show notes as well. Well, Pranay, tell us about the 5 steps to invest in a commercial real estate syndication.
The first thing is trying to find the right person to invest in. Just like you find a good sports team, if nothing else, if LeBron's on your team or Tom Brady's on your team, it's probably going to have some success. So first is finding the right team. Number 2 is talking to them. So many people will invest without talking to this group, right? And I think it's just so important. This is a 5-year marriage that you're having to this people. So we tell our investors, like, not only do we want to get you a good return, but we want you to sleep well at night, knowing that we're being good stewards of your money. And that comes down to communication style. It comes into kind of the values that they hold dear, right? And so you want to have a good kind of synergy. So for example, we really pride ourselves in taking care of our tenants, taking care of our investors, and really trying to make a win-win. That means we don't maximize 100% of the profits, but we also think that by doing that and taking care of our tenants, they're actually going to pay us more and less likely to leave. So talk to people. 3, look at how the structure of the deal is. So you can have a great team, but if all the money goes to them and it flows to them, you're the one taking the risk, right? By not having control. So make sure there's a preferred return, which means that you get a majority, that the first money that comes out of the property goes to you, right? That's your compensation for the risk. And then actually after preferred return, we give you all your money back. So that means you get 100% of the return up until the preferred return, then all your money back. And then we'll do like a 75-25. So you get 75, we get 25, or you get 80%, we get 20%. So something like that. So look at that. And then the last 2 are not as important. So if the team is good, the money looks good. We also look at the market, and finally, the deal itself, the property, right? So market, we want to make sure that there's net migration. People are moving into the area, and that there's more jobs than kind of the national average. And there's not a ton of new construction in the area. And then lastly, the deal. Like, how does the deal look? Like, are the assumptions, meaning do they expect a 7% rent jump in the first year? Like, that's not reasonable, right? What kind of a loan are they getting on the property? Assuming if everything else 1 through 4 is good, that should be okay, but it's always good to double check, right? Trust but verify. So I think if you look at those 5 things, it can be done in an hour. And if you start doing this regularly, I mean, I could look at a deal in 10 minutes and know if it's worth spending time on and talking to people.
How can we succeed as entrepreneurs while working a full-time job?
So I actually have 4-step process for this. One is figure out your why, right? And it almost always, actually, if your why is strong enough, you're gonna figure it out, right? If there's this entrepreneur, he says, if someone kidnapped your son, you would figure out how to get them back, right? But trying to learn a new language, you'll just come up with all these excuses for not to do it, right? So it's still something, it's doing something, but figuring out your why is super important. And then that's a personal, a familial, and then also some kind of broader community, because I think we all want to lead some kind of impact. And then two, who is the type of person that does that gets that, right? So for me, say you want to write a book, what are the qualities of or the identity of a writer, right? And how do you kind of envelop that? And then three, how do you create the habits to that accomplishes that, right? So not being like, hey, I'm gonna go write this book and that's it, right? So you got to have, okay, I'm gonna write 2 sentences. I'm gonna write a paragraph, right? Stephen King writes 5,000 words a day. The chances of
Oh,
you doing that is gonna be next to impossible, right? So what is your why? What is your identity? How do you create your habits? And if you do all that, then you're much more likely to accomplish whatever you want to do, because a lot of times we don't have a plan, or we focus too much on the how, but we really got to do kind of the what and the why. And lastly, you need to create some type of framework to make decisions, and so that you have like a matrix that you put all your decisions through. And a lot of people would say that's your values. I personally don't like that, because your values are stagnant, right? You're a person of integrity, you have morals, so those don't change. But if you look at what I want to do now, in terms of business, and you look at what I wanted to do 10 years ago, they're completely different. So what I actually call them is guiding principles. So one of mine is called handle hard better, and it's actually based on a speech that the North Carolina women's basketball coach said. And she said, life, we always expect it to get easier, right? So after med school, I'm like, oh yeah, I just can't wait to be a resident. Life is going to be so much better. In residency, I can't wait to be a full-fledged doctor. Life is going to be so much easier, right? Can't wait for my kid to be 5. Life is going to be so much easier, right? But it isn't. Life actually just gets harder. And the way to survive is that you get better at handling hard. So that's one of my guiding principles and how I kind of look at things. And so having that framework and having a strong one, you want to try to get around 6 or so. And then always, if you find a better one, just replace it with whatever you have. And I think so having the 4-step process just makes entrepreneurship so much easier.
yeah, those are very important steps, and I think a unique way of looking at them. I've not looked at them quite that way, but I can see why that could be a very valuable roadmap to entrepreneurship and to really just a life that is on a path of continuous growth and development. Well, why is it important for really anyone, but certainly high-paid professionals? Why is it important for them to have that side hustle?
I think you can't put all your eggs in one basket. And one of the reasons I got into medicine is my dad always told me you're going to have job security. Your people are always going to get sick, right?
Mhm.
And what we saw in 2020 during the pandemic, a lot of physicians were getting furloughed. Some were getting laid off. So, it's a once in our lifetime, hopefully, thing, but it just tells you that your job isn't necessarily secure. And people are getting pay cuts, and there's a lot of uncertainty in medicine, which is supposed to be one of the most secure, certain things. And now we have this upcoming AI that's going to change a lot of kind of how we see technology. So I think you really got to diversify your income. And I talk to a lot of investors, a lot of physician investors especially, but a lot of people in engineers, and they almost have like a golden parachute with this really high salary. but it's not guaranteed. I talked to someone who's an orthopedic doctor. So he does bone surgeries, knee replacements, and he hurt his hand. And now he can't feel forceps anymore. So he can't do surgery. And he's in his young 50s. So his life is completely different now. And so this extremely high salary, he can't count on it anymore. Fortunately for them, they're investors of ours and on other people, that they have a decent salary coming in elsewhere. But if they only had this one salary, even though it's super high, if they didn't have either some investments, a side business, it'd be very difficult for them, at least for a couple years.
Well, let's close here by just clarifying why real estate is such a good source for financial freedom.
I love real estate. There's very few things that are so tax efficient, right? And especially on the passive side, the amount of return you get for hours spent is amazing, right? It's very similar to the stock market, except it's super tax advantage. And a lot of people invest in the stock market in their retirement accounts, but you get really the same benefits by the returns you get from real estate is tax deferred. It's money that you can live off of. And, I hope to retire a lot earlier than 65, but it's also, you're buying a tangible asset, right? And even in 2008, 2009, commercial multifamily, so big apartment complexes, they were doing very well. They took a small hit, but it's not like single family homes. So it's a safe, tangible investment. And if you've been looking at your stock portfolio and even bond portfolio, there's just so much volatility right now. But remember, people always need a place to live, right? And if you buy smart, you get good debt, then you can take a lot of the risk off the table in terms of commercial real estate, and you get a good stable investment. I'm not saying take out all your money in your 401k, but make sure you have a good, 10 to 20% exposure of real estate, and it'll really balance out your portfolio and give you money to live off of.
Well, Pranay, it has just been wonderful having you today. Very enlightening, informative conversation. Gave us a lot to think about. So thank you for being with us today.
Alan, thank you so much.
Enlightened investors, wait, don't go just yet. I just want to remind you about our recently launched webinar that you will not want to miss. If you're at all curious and would like to learn more about how real estate investing can diversify your investment portfolio, alleviate the anxiety associated with Wall Street swings, leverage your 401ks and IRAs to substantially increase the return on your investment, and do all of this with turnkey, hands-off passive real estate investments, then you'll want to immediately go to steedtalker.com/webinar. In the webinar, we'll also address the common dubious investment schemes that you want to avoid. To access the webinar, go to steedtalker.com/webinar. I look forward to seeing you in the webinar.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.